Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome back to Bariatrics and Beyond. And might I add, Happy New Year, EOC family. So what better way to start the new year? Because you know this whole new year, new me, let's all get on our diets. But we're not doing that this year. So on today's podcast, we have the one, the only, all the way from Tijuana, Mexico, Dr. Carmen Calleja. How are you, Dr. Carmen?
I am good. How are you, Kayla?
Good.
Nice. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, everyone at our EOC family.
Wait, I think I learned how to say Happy New Year. I was in TJ last week. Feliz Tell me. Feliz
Año
Nuevo. Nuevo. Feliz Año Nuevo. Okay. There we go. Happy New Year.
Feliz Nuevo.
Yeah, I love all the green behind you. Is that all real?
Mm-hmm.
Very nice.
Yeah, my plant babies. I have a green thumb.
Yeah, you do. Very cool. I love it. All right. So, Dr. Carmen, you know how a new year starts, everybody, gets a gym membership. Everybody goes on these restrictive diets. And then I feel like in the bariatric group, I see a lot of people saying, they've got a lot of questions. What should my macros be? What should this be? What's the pouch reset? So I think on today's topic, let's talk about sustaining and maintaining a healthy habits and a lifestyle that you can sustain. So what's your take on diets post-op?
So, well, I don't like talking, or I don't like calling it a diet. I don't even like talking in, groups like protein, carbs, fat. Food is food. And I think we really need to learn how to enjoy food. And I think that if you've been dieting a lot, and because a lot of our patients have been dieting a lot throughout their whole lives, or through most part of their adult lives, there's a lot of ideas around weight loss, that it's just about restriction and counting or avoiding carbohydrates, or avoiding certain food groups, or avoiding this and that, and that kind of takes away the pleasure from eating. And a huge factor around eating and health is pleasure too. So I think that if we are dieting, counting, it takes the pleasure out of something that is, should be enjoyed.
Right.
Food is to be enjoyed too. So I'm not too big on diets, that.
Right. I agree. But to sustain or to tweak your nutrition habits, I think that's what we need to do after surgery. Because let's be honest, a lot of us, especially if you've been morbidly obese your whole life, you pretty much eat like crap. So I think we have to figure out what's crap and what's good, and where's that in between for me. So let's just say, I know you're really big on whole foods, right? So we trying to incorporate whole foods and cut out all those ultra processed foods. Can you talk about the difference there?
Yes. Ultra processed products, I really don't like calling them foods, but ultra processed products are made from industrialized ingredients. So what happens is that we have whole foods, plants, animals, whole grains and legumes and chicken, and what we buy as ingredients at the store. And then the more they get processed, the more they get stripped of their nutrients. So let's say we have a peach. So we have a peach that is basically just cut from the tree. That's the process that it has gone through. That's the only process. That would be considered a whole food. And then we have canned peaches in, when they're in syrup. It's still a peach. It's processed, but it's processed so that it can be conserved and it can be eaten later. So that would be just a processed food, or a group 3 food. That's, we can go through all of that through the groups of processing. And then, or the Nova stages. And then we have ultra processed, which would be that peach, but it's not actually a peach. It's peach flavored. It could be like a peach soda that it tastes like peach. It smells like peach. It looks like peach. The can is probably peach colored, but it has absolutely no peach in it. It's a powder that was made to resemble the actual food from group 1, which would be a peach. Mm-hmm. So that's why I'm so, I'm very insisting on avoiding these type of products because they have little or no nutritional value. And the thing about dieting and ultra processed products is that many people are used to buying these products because they're labeled as health foods when they say 0 sugar or 0 calorie or 0 carbs, or they have a certain label that is meant to sound like it's something healthy because it doesn't make you gain weight, but it also doesn't nourish you. It doesn't have all the nutrients that peaches would have, to use that example. So that's the big difference. So we have whole foods, which the only process that they have been through is to being cut from the ground, or it has not been transformed into a product. And then we have culinary ingredients, and then we have processed foods, and then we have ultra processed foods. So there's four groups in the classification of foods, and that's the fourth group. That's what we need to avoid, or that's what I encourage that we avoid, especially if we've been dieting many times in the past. We're used to buying these products, and it can be a little bit difficult to transform your eating patterns into whole foods. But yeah, I mean, it's part of the learning process too. And it's also something that can be done a lot easier after surgery because of all of the changes that your palate goes through, and all of the changes in your in the pleasure center in your brain. So all of this does help to make healthier choices.
Yeah, that's really good info. So I think, like you said, it's about learning, but it's also about unlearning too, because I think we are so programmed just to, especially because it's convenient, just to quick grab and go, and like, oh, this is so convenient, and I ate this and it's super easy. Okay, but you guys, like, it's not good for you. So I think we need to just unlearn. And like you said, like, food is there to enjoy, and we need to take our time with food, like cook, go to the grocery store, buy real foods, cook, meal prep. I see a lot of the time in the support page, people say, oh, I've regained, and, can someone give me the link to the pouch reset diet? And we'll talk about that in a second. And, I always go in and say, look, guys, a pouch reset is just another yo-yo diet. You're just going to restrict yourself. You're only going to be taking in water. You're going to be losing water weight. And as soon as you eat, you're going to put it back on. Stick to whole foods, nothing out of a packet. These are my rules for myself, and I might use post up. Nothing out of a packet. Buy the food, cook the food, eat it. I'm really big on avoiding snacking and grazing throughout the day as well. I'd rather eat 3-4 meals if I have to, if I'm hungry again. But I really try to minimize or eliminate the snacking. But if you do snack on whole foods. Grab a peach, grab some nuts, grab some walnuts, or whatever it may be. But I think the media is so like, no carbs, no sugar, and people will look at that peach and go, well, there's so much sugar in that peach, or there's so much carbs in that peach. So can you also talk about the sugar, the carbs, the natural sugar, the processed sugar, and how that's just a load of BS? Yes. People would rather go for a super artificial loaded up protein snack or a sugar-free snack over a peach.
Yeah, definitely. And now that you mentioned that, carbs, we have that idea because the keto diet was so popular recently, and just avoiding carbs all of a sudden became like the enemy. And then we talk about good carbs versus bad carbs. And I really think that's the wrong question that we should be asking. It's really eating real food, right? So even though a fruit is considered a carb, that's why I don't like labeling foods as just carbs or as just fat or as just protein, because fruits are considered carbs, but they also have antioxidants. They also have vitamins and minerals, which is what we are looking for after surgery, because your um, your micronutrient absorption is different now. So you really need to get micronutrients from your food. And the main source for that are fruits and vegetables, which would be carbs. So we really should stop looking at food as just carbs or just protein. It's actually a group of nutrients that are going to nourish you, and that you also should be enjoying. So really talking about carbohydrates being the bad guy, it kind of just keeps you disconnected from food. And the goal after surgery isn't to eat less sugar or to eat less carbs. It's to eat better and to eat consistently at in a healthier pattern, and more calmly, and all of these other habits that you need to form as far as how often you eat and how much you eat and how fast you eat, but also being aware that every time that you are going to eat something, it's an opportunity for you to be nourished, not an opportunity to lose weight or gain weight.
Mm-hmm. And can you give us your take on carbs? Because we hear good carbs and bad carbs, and same with sugar. We hear refined sugar and natural sugar. So can you kind of break that down for us at home?
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, carbohydrates, I don't like labeling food, as carbohydrates, and much less saying it's good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more about eating real food that will nourish you. So let's say sugar. Sugar is a carbohydrate, of course, and it's your birthday. If you would compare, of course, say a birthday cake to a piece of fruit, a piece of fruit is better. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
it nourishes you. But if it's your birthday and you're eating birthday cake, well, I mean, in that moment, the birthday cake is the best option. So I think we really should stop labeling food as good or bad and start looking at the whole context of why am I eating this? Is my goal right now to nourish myself? Is it to have pleasure? Is it to have better connection to my family? Because food is all of that. Food is not just, is it going to make me gain weight? Is it a good carb or is it a bad carb or is it a protein? I know that many of the questions that we have from our patients revolve a lot around protein. And I really don't like thinking of food as just, oh, it's a protein, so I should eat it. It's, maybe it's a piece of chicken that I am going to enjoy with my family, or maybe it's a piece of steak that I can't eat too much of, but I'm going to enjoy it with my family. It's the steakhouse that I like a lot. So it's something that is going to nourish you in other ways that is not just calories or nutrients.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of this, after surgery is just reprogramming your brain about how to understand food. And because, a lot of the time, I think for a lot of people who have been obese, I think what happens is we tend to self-soothe with food in a very unhealthy way, though. So I think what you try to teach after this surgery is just having a better relationship with food and understanding food versus using it as a coping mechanism a lot of the time too.
Right. And well, I mean, and that part is, I think something that it can be a little bit difficult after surgery, like the emotional part.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's when these support groups are wonderful because it goes way beyond just education, because you can learn a lot about food and you can know everything about food. But when that moment comes when it's, you just have to have food. And I think that everybody has experienced that, where it's, you're saying to yourself in your head, I can't eat this, I can't eat this, I can't eat this. And then you just have to go get it and eat it. It's, it's that impulse, it's emotional. There's another, there's a different meaning to that. So I think that's when support groups and people like you or counseling also are a huge part of after bariatric surgery, not just having all the knowledge, but of course, having all of this knowledge around food. The more you know, the better choices you're going to make around food. So learning about it is the most important thing, I think, because that really directs you to what you're going to have in your house and what your environment is going to be like, but also having the support or the emotional support to not have these impulses to eat is also a huge part of, healthy eating.
Yeah, it's almost like breaking down the reason that you're turning to, binge eat, because, it's a huge thing. And I think a lot of us, just like alcohol and other addictions, food is quite the addiction for a lot of people. So I think you need to, it's bigger than the food. You kind of have to say to yourself, what's the root of this? Why am I turning to food to soothe whatever's going on? So I think at that point, you have to just kind of stop and think, why is this happening? And for me, I never really thought that I was addicted to food until after the surgery. And I realized how much, like, when I was bored, I would get hungry and I would eat. So for me, I just had to find other hobbies, other habits. And I think a lot of the time, transfer addiction after surgery is a huge thing too, because you kind of just transferring one addiction to another. So if you are a food addict, sometimes people transfer that to maybe drinking or, other bad habits. And I think that's where we have to just kind of really slow down, process what's going on up here, and transfer that to something else. So think about something that's beneficial to transfer that habit to, not to alcohol, not to drugs, not to gambling, not to, shopping. I'll tell you, like I did, I was like, oh, now that I can fit into this, when I would get bored, instead of going to the refrigerator, I'd go out to the store and be like, oh, let me see what I can fit into today. So like I'm guilty of also having a bit of a transfer addiction, and it came to shopping. But I think it's really good to find a hobby or something that you want to improve on. So I kind of did switch that to like, crafting, and I would just find projects to do. So like, I mean, if you're trying to learn another language, maybe like you're getting that like, oh, I want to go do this, go, do some time on whatever that app is. What's the app where you can learn another language, whatever that is?
Duolingo.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Download something like that. Like put that new habit into good use. Pick up a new skill or go volunteer. I also did that too. So I think we don't realize how A, social eating is, B, how much we just do it without thinking, and how we do it as a coping mechanism too. So I think learning to slow down, to process your feelings and emotions, and then apply that to maybe something else, but also having a very good understanding of food and how it nourishes you is huge.
Yes, and not just about the food, because it is really important to have all that knowledge, but also about how your body has changed and how it's your eating patterns are going to change with the surgery too. So having that awareness, and I've been working with bariatric surgery for many years, and I've worked with patients that had their surgery many years ago when many of these things had not been understood yet. And, I asked them, do you remember after surgery that you had more impulse control, or you had, your taste buds changed, the way that you perceived food was different? And it's like, oh, yes, I remember. But, that's not something that lasts forever. So maybe they didn't use that tool to make changes in the environment.
Right.
So it's also really important to have that awareness. And that's why we have that class when patients have surgery. And that's why, I really stress that part about understanding. I mean, yes, understanding food, what's good for you, what nourishes you, but also understanding the way that you are perceiving food now that you just had the surgery. And I'm sure that you lived through this, and I'm sure that patients that are listening to this have lived through this, where, just everything that you had an impulse for eating, you didn't have that the first few months after surgery. And you didn't have many of the cravings that you had, or maybe your cravings changed towards healthier foods, but you didn't pay attention to it. So also learning about the surgery and how it works, and understanding that it's not just a smaller stomach that is going to help you eat less, and that it's not just mechanical restriction that you are relying on.
Mm-hmm.
So that also gives you a lot more opportunity to make better choices, not just around, what you know about the food, but what you know when you know what's going on in your body. And I think that also goes back to that pouch reset, that
Mm-hmm.
if we're thinking that the surgery is just mechanical restriction and that's it, well, then it kind of makes sense to do a pouch reset. But when you understand that there's a lot more behind what you are deciding to eat, because there's hormones involved, your brain has changed. There's this part of your brain that tells you how much pleasure you feel with certain foods is completely different now after surgery, or, all of those changes that we talk about. Once you understand it, it also helps you make much better choices
Mm-hmm.
around food. I mean, the more you know, I always say that the more you know, the better choices you are going to make.
Yeah, you just kind of have to be more in tune with your body too.
Exactly.
Now, the dreaded pouch reset. Dr. Carmen, I see this question on the page almost daily. Some people either A, don't get to their goal weight, B, have regained, especially over the holidays. I mean, we're all human. It happens. And then they just want a really quick fix. They want to drop 5 to 10 pounds in 5 to 10 days, and they want to do a pouch reset. Why is this a terrible idea?
Well, first of all, the weight regain, because you mentioned it, after weight regain, a lot of people will want to do a pouch reset. But the number one cause of weight regain is not food, it's muscle.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not because you are, maybe it probably has nothing to do with how much you are eating, because a pouch reset is basically that. It kind of just resets the amount of food that you are eating. But the main cause of weight regain is not having enough muscle to support your weight loss. So if we're just focused on food, I mean, it's the only thing that we need to think about after surgery, and food and eating less and restriction, then we can, it's easy to go into those ideas that, oh, okay, maybe if I'm eating less, I might lose weight. And then if you're not exercising, and let's say that you do start eating less and you do eat and you do lose weight, if you're not exercising enough, this weight, you're going to gain it back because you're not going to have enough muscle to support your metabolic rate, your metabolic health. So it is a combination of a lot of habits and actions that you have to take around health. It's not just how much food you're going to eat. And when we talk about pouch resets, you're basically just restricting food again, and maybe not paying attention to these other habits that you need in order to have overall health, which will eventually lead to a healthy weight.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let me give you an example, because I think a lot of people have experienced this, right? You're on a good roll. You've adapted healthier habits. You've cut out the ultra processed foods, so on and so forth. And then you have, a day where you overindulge, and then that day turns into a week, and then that week turns into a month or 2 or 3. And instead of, making wiser choices, every day you're having a cupcake and a bag of chips and, soda, and all those ultra processed foods have just kind of crept their way back in. And slider foods, we'll talk about that next too. But let's just say you've completely done a 180 and you're on the opposite end now. What's I think these kind of people who have kind of fallen off the wagon a little bit, and then they want to get back on, that's when they're like, well, I need to do a pouch reset, thinking that pouch reset is going to undo all of that. What is your suggestion to people who have let all those habits creep back in consistently for a while and have regained from that?
There's different things that you can work on. And like I said, maybe it's not just the food, it could be that you're not exercising enough or that you are not, and that also can lead to unhealthy eating. But if we're talking just specifically about food, and I understand where the pouch reset comes from, and I would recommend a reset, but not a pouch reset, kind of like a palate reset. That's what
Ah.
that's what I do because I fall into those habits a lot.
Yeah, I mean, we're human. It happens. Like no one is
Exactly.
immune to it.
Yeah, or you go out,
Yeah.
we're very social at EOC, and then we'll go out, we'll drink, I'll drink too much one day, and then the next day it's like, oh, I need, hangover food. And then all of a
Right.
sudden I'm like, oh my God, my habits are off.
Yeah.
And one thing this is what I do and what I recommend directly to patients, sometimes it's not a pouch reset, but like a palate reset. So if you start doing smoothie, I have a smoothie craze. I
Yeah,
love
you love
recommending
your smoothies. Yeah.
Yeah. So like with that type, or, just start eating fruits and vegetables. So for me, a reset that I would do would just start, drinking a smoothie every day that has all of the characteristics that we've talked about.
One
green,
that you make, not a tropical smoothie, right?
yeah. No milk, nothing like that. Water, just trying to blend as many fruits and vegetables as you can. And this is one for the nutrients, but it also starts getting used, your palate starts getting used to these type of flavors again. So it's not, you're not resetting your pouch, but you are resetting your palate, which is something that happens that, you make, or you notice this after surgery. It's very obvious, the difference that you have now in the way that you perceive certain flavors. So it's kind of like trying to go back to that. That would be one thing. Number two would be definitely cutting, like anything. If it's not within your possibilities right now to cut off ultra processed foods, at least cut off artificial sweeteners, because those stimulate your palate and then you just craving more flavor. And it's not just sweet flavor that you start craving. You start craving the sensation of fat, or you start craving salty, or you start craving, flavor. You want continuous palate stimulation with some type of flavor. So cutting out artificial sweeteners is a wonderful way to start. If it's something that, again, you always have to look at the lowest hanging fruit. If it's also within your possibilities, start doing some type of practices that can slow you down. Meditation, yoga. Yoga is a wonderful, wonderful tool to also be a lot more aware of your body and of your sensations and your feelings of hunger and your feelings of satiety. So that can also be a really good option. If you're drinking alcohol, cutting down on alcohol. So, just looking for what habit, what is the easiest habit that you can do right now that you can start immediately, start doing that. There's a lot of different suggestions that I could make about, how to kind of get back on track, but it depends on what you are willing to do and what you are willing to sustain also, because I can start saying, well, yeah, tomorrow I'm going to start eating this or this or this. But if I know it's not within my possibilities, then maybe the easiest thing would just go for walks. And then just doing that walk is going to calm me down. It's going to, meditation or being out in nature does help you a lot with these type of impulses. So there's a lot of different things that you can do that does not just revolve around food in order to get back on track.
I love that. And it doesn't have to be so restrictive, because I feel like once we restrict ourselves, that's how the yo-yo happens. And then we go, it's like we're all or nothing, and then we're nothing. And then all of a sudden you're all again. And then that's how, like, this is anybody who's had weight loss surgery, I guarantee you we've lived that life. And we're not doing that again, guys. Like, this is a whole new lease on life. So just, don't be restrictive and don't be all or nothing. Just take it day by day. And like you said, I think we just all need to learn how to like slow down and be more in tune with our bodies and our food and all that stuff.
Right. And also I think that when there's a lot of dieting, or when there's been a lot of attempts for weight loss throughout your adult life, that idea that you have about it is restriction, or it's a no, don't do this, stop doing this, or stop eating certain foods or stop having certain habits. But when we look at it like, okay, no, I'm not going to stop myself from anything right now. I'm going to start adding something. So I'm going to start adding greens, whatever, to everything that I eat now. That can be also a good way of looking at it, because you're not thinking about it as a restriction or as a punishment. You're thinking, no, I need to add. I need to add to my health, not subtract from my bad habits, because that's going to happen eventually.
Yeah,
but
I love
start, looking at it like, okay, so for today, my goal is to start adding greens to everything. And, you can add spinach to anything, to your smoothies, to whatever you're eating. You can add, a handful of spinach. And that's just something that you're going to think, oh, I'm doing something good for my body. So maybe in 3 days, I'll add something else, and I'll add something else. And then eventually you'll be able to subtract that bad habit easily, because you've already substituted it with something that is good for your health.
Yeah, I love that.
Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I think this journey is more about unlearning.
Yes.
What we've been brainwashed into thinking, healthy is. So in saying that, Dr. Carmen, we've got a few more minutes. And yesterday I went to the Facebook page and I just asked some people, hey, what do you want me to ask Dr. Carmen? So I'm going to read through some comments. I feel like we've touched on pretty much, I feel like these comments you've answered them very well, but let's just go over them. This is a good one. Frankie says, what should my macros look like post-surgery? And you kind of touched on that a bit already.
Yeah, well, I think that there's, like I said, I don't really like labeling food as a protein or a carb or a fat, but rather looking at it as whole food, because there's protein that has fat, and there's fats that have, carbs, or there's carbs that have protein. So it is, protein matters a lot, but it's not the only macro. We really need to, and, always chasing numbers. I'm really against that, really trying to get a certain percentage of macronutrients into your diet. I don't think it's useful if you're trying to lose weight. It's very useful when you're trying to gain muscle, but that's a different kind.
That's a different kettle of fish.
That's a different kind of diet. That's a different kind of eating pattern that you should adapt. I'm not specialized in diets for athletes, so that's something that I don't manage too well. But as far as if you're trying to eat balanced, healthy, and balanced for weight loss, it's not so much as what your macros should look like. And macros are it's a tool. It's not a scorecard. So protein should always be a priority. We know, because protein is one of the macronutrients that we lose most after surgery. So I mean, making that a priority, usually the rest just balances itself out. And then I really love the whole food, plant-based eating pattern. That's what I suggest. And that's what we, as here in Mexico and Canada, we now have the new nutritional guidelines, or the food pyramid just came out. Yeah. And it does tell you more about eating well-balanced, eating real food, eating healthy, but it still places that hierarchy in food groups. So it's really not something that I recommend, because it can burn you out. But we're trying to get healthy eating patterns. So we're aiming for patterns, not for perfection. Protein should be a priority, but not an obsession.
I agree.
And carbs have to be very strategic. So getting mainly fiber rich from mostly whole foods, and fats are more for functional. Fat helps with satiety, and it also helps control blood sugar control. Or control your blood sugar. So that was also a question that we had, reactive hypoglycemia, and fat is key for that. So if we look at macros as something that is going to help us with a healthier eating pattern, that's the way that we should look at them. But if we're going for, 20% this, 40% that, I think it just causes more confusion and a burnout, and you will obsess over those numbers instead of obsessing over whole foods, which is, if we are going to have an obsession over food, it should be about eating whole foods and avoiding ultra processed foods, not having a hierarchy in your macros.
Right. And let's be honest, you guys, we're not going to count macros every day for the rest of our life. So let it be something that, you just kind of have a general knowledge of, and then something that you can sustain. You're not going to go out to a restaurant and be like, well, how many macros does this have? How many macros is that? And it's not, you might do it, let's be honest, you might do it for like a couple months, but you got to think the rest of your life, what can I maintain for the rest of my life? So just finding that balance. So I like that one. Matthew Dunning asked, good carbs, bad carbs. So we kind of touched on that as well, but is there a difference?
Well, yeah, I mean, definitely there are certain carbs that we need to avoid, especially, sugar, all of these pastries, cakes, desserts. But again, it's like good or bad compared to what? It's not that they are good or bad. It's compared to what? The only thing that I would say carbohydrates that you need to avoid are the ones that are ultra processed. But if we're talking about fruit, or if we're talking even like the culinary ingredients that we use to give food's flavor, which would be labeled as carbs, maybe table sugar for our coffee. I mean, that's fine. Honey, these using them as ingredients to give flavor to our meals. That's different than eating something that is ultra processed. So what we really want to avoid is all of the products.
Yep.
Yeah. So if we're comparing carbs, I think that's how we should go.
Okay. And we have Melissa and actually a few other people in the comments. They're saying, obviously we do say prioritize your protein. She's saying, I can't stomach another protein shake, which is I want to know your take on people thinking that they got to have protein shakes every day. How to get more protein without having to have a protein shake.
Yeah, I mean, and it's real. That protein
propaganda.
There's protein fatigue, shakes, and really sometimes we think that the only way to get protein is either from animal meat or protein shakes. But there's a lot of real food options that, if we're being plant forward, that we can use maybe lentils, beans, chickpeas, legumes, adding legumes to any plate that you are eating. That would be a really good way of increasing your protein intake. Adding some tofu to your smoothie, that could be another way, or snacking on edamame, or yogurt, adding yogurt that is high in protein, unsweetened, that the only ingredient is milk and the cultures, snacking on nuts and seeds, making hummus. So if we're trying to get in more protein, but we really cannot eat, because we always think protein and we think beef, chicken, pork, because that's what has the highest the highest amount of protein, or with the highest biological value. So if we can't eat too much of that, we need to look for the foods that are high in protein that are easier to eat, which legumes would be the number one option. I always say, legumes are your best friends after surgery. And I know that there is a problem with gas, because people always ask that, how can I get past that
gassy,
gas? If I eat lentils, but that happens because your microbiome is not used to eating lentils. So once you start getting used to it, the gas will resolve by itself. And then there's other culinary tricks that in our cooking classes we talk about it. You can soak them twice. Some people will soak them with like baking soda. There's different tricks that you can try, but it's just mainly eating more of them. So that would be my answer to how can I increase my protein intake? Look for protein that is easy to eat, and that would be plant foods.
Good idea. Chantel, she had pretty much the same question. She can't do any more cottage cheese. And then she wants to know what I eat in a day. I'm going to do a video on that soon. But I'm very basic. And like I said, I'm boring, but it works for me. It doesn't necessarily work for everybody. So you have to do what works for you. Chris basically asked the same question, other ways to get protein in when he doesn't feel like eating eggs or meat. And so or protein shakes. So you answered that one. We had a lot of people asking that question. And then, okay, Stephanie, we also just answered that one too, the importance of real protein versus protein shakes and supplements. So you definitely answered that one.
Yeah, we really need to see these protein shakes as a tool because they are very useful, but it's not the only way that you're going to get protein. And we don't recommend that either because you really do need to savor your food, chew it. It's part of having that or going back to enjoying your food is, of course, chewing it, eating slow, savoring it. And if it's something that you are just drinking really fast to get to a certain number, then it kind of, takes out that enjoyment of, eating.
Defeats the purpose. I think
Exactly.
Post-op, because obviously, we have to kind of baby our stomachs back to, health, let's just say, the protein shakes are recommended. But if we are more than 4, 5, 6 months out, is it true we don't need those shakes anymore, right?
No. And I always recommend that you keep them as a tool. Sometimes you just run out of your house. You don't have time for breakfast. And the only thing you're going to find is, junk food or nothing that is going to contribute to your health. Then, that's the moment to take a protein shake. Or, you didn't have time to pack a lunch and then you're not going to find anything healthy. So, take a protein shake. So those type of, as something functional, as a tool, you can use it, but not as something to be part of your everyday meals, because I know that some people will rely on it so much, but then you stop learning how to get protein from from real food. And the idea here is that you eat real food.
Yep. I love that. And then we have one last question. We have from Jennifer. She said different proteins in different stages post-op, how to find the right macros for yourself and how to track them without being so time consuming. I feel like you've definitely answered that. That's what this whole podcast has been about. But you can see everybody asking the same questions, similar questions. And I think it's because we are so programmed to that diet culture, because that's all we know. When you're overweight and you got to lose weight, that's what, everyone just tells you. Figure out your macros and, have a protein shake. So, Dr. Carmen, thank you so much for shedding light on, and giving us your perspective on what food should look like and nutrition should look like, because I think like we said, there's so much terrible diet culture out there. And all of that is just not sustainable. Nothing, we can't live like that for the rest of our life.
Yeah. And it's terrible. I really hate seeing how diet culture then starts to bleed into bariatric eating, but that should be something that should have transformed. And then, you can't go back to that. So it does have a lot to do with unlearning. And also it's not just the food, but also, there's so many other things that we need to focus on too. Hydration, movement, stress, sleep. So, there's so many things that in our health that we can continue to explore after surgery, that we should not be obsessing just on food again.
Food and numbers.
Exactly.
Yeah. And guys, Rome wasn't built in a day. We didn't become overweight overnight. We learned all these habits and we believed all this diet culture and propaganda. So be easy on yourself, be patient, take it day by day, unlearn, learn. It's definitely a learning process. So have patience, and any quick fix isn't actually a fix. It's just a Band-Aid, and it's only going to rip off and open up again. So really take the time to just change your habits, change your outlook, change your perspective, slow down. We're not in a rush. It's going to happen. And like you said, Dr. Carmen, even you don't have to eliminate everything right away, but add one thing in, a healthy habit in a day. And I really like that approach to it. So thank you so much for shedding.
Thank you so much. No. Thank you.
A different perspective on it, because I think we all just think diet restriction and I can't eat this ever again. So I love the way that you approach food.
Can I just say one last thing that I think is really important? don't eat for weight loss, eat for health. So every time you're going to eat something, think, how is this supporting my health? Now, not how is this supporting my weight loss? And I think that can also change a lot of the ways that you look at food.
Yes, it's very much so changing your perspective on things. I love that, Dr. Carmen. Thank you so much for dropping those gems today. And you guys, if you are freshly post-op and let's just say they didn't make the meeting, it is linked in our YouTube. We have a whole, if you're watching this on YouTube, this podcast, we also have a whole Dr. Carmen folder. So you go through what legumes are, you go through seeds and oils and processed foods. So make sure if you are on our YouTube, head over to that playlist as well because Dr. Carmen has some really, really great info. So thank you so much, Dr. Carmen. And hopefully next time you're in Vegas, we could get you in the studio. Maybe over at my house, we can maybe do some cooking shows.
Definitely.
That'd be cool. Okay. All right.
I would love that.
I would love that too. Let me know next time you're in town.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you guys, and do something today to better yourself tomorrow. Add a little healthy in every day. Love you guys, and we'll see you next episode here on Bariatrics and Beyond.